Welcome back to Unfiltered and Unbound. I'm your host, Kate Baxter. And today's conversation is one I've genuinely been looking forward to. We're going to be talking about critical thinking and decision making, which sounds almost academic until you realize it's actually the difference between spending the next decade reacting to your life or actually leading it. Today's conversation is with Beth Ann Wynne, a Perth based critical thinking and communications trainer who works with people and teams to think more clearly and communicate with greater impact. Beth Ann is also the author of The Human Edge, a practical exploration of what it really takes to stay human, thoughtful, and effective in today's fast moving world. While we don't dive deeply into the book in this episode, I've included details in the show notes if you'd like to explore it further. Beth Ann, welcome to Unfiltered and Unbound. I'm really glad that you're here and I'm actually quite excited today.
Me too.
So, before we get started, can you share a bit about your background and what led you to focus on critical thinking and communication?
So I've been in education in all its forms for about 25 years now, which is kind of weird. So currently I'm a facilitator, trainer, speaker on critical thinking and communication skills, human skills. I before that I was at UWA College and I'd been there for many years teaching lots in the kind of humanities and English space. But I was asked to teach critical thinking and create a critical thinking course. And I had what's known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, beginner's
Hmm.
confidence. I was like, "Yeah, sure, I can do that. How hard can it be?" And then in picking it up, I realized how much more there was to critical thinking than I realized in the get-go, and also how useful it was. Because I was at a stage of life where, we'd been making lots of big decisions regards family, relationships, moving, where to live, all this kind of stuff,
Mm.
and I found it very useful on a personal level and put it on Facebook to a few friends. Say, does anybody want to do some critical thinking stuff with me? Because I think it's kind of cool. And a small group said yes, and they got an awful lot of value from it as well. And so I was like, oh, it's not just me. And yeah, the rest is history, really. It's sort of slowly evolved into quite the
Hmm.
beast by now. I'm very busy this year. Critical thinking, I think, is even more spoken about. There's more understanding of why it's so important, particularly in regards to AI and fake news and how we consume media and all sorts. So, yeah, I love it. I'm passionate about it and the confidence and the clarity that it brings people.
Yeah, that really comes across when you're talking about it, just how passionate you are. And it's amazing how sometimes those little things that you start can sort of appeal to a much wider audience once you start asking people.
Yeah, I think when I launched the business, people go, "Oh, critical thinking, that's important. It's important for other people."
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas now I think we're all much more aware of sort of protecting our brains and cognitive sovereignty and not wanting to offload decision making.
Mm.
So it's much more in the kind of zeitgeist, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a point there where you say it's not just related to corporate or it's not just
Mm.
related to them. So, for the everyday person, how would you define critical thinking in a way that would resonate with them?
I suppose the tell me like I'm five is careful thinking, thinking something through slowly and carefully. A bit deeper than that, I'd say it's a combination of skills, knowledge, and attitude. So, skills like evaluation, analysis, and judgment, which I think everyone's capable of. But when we get busy, we sometimes forget to apply those skills.
Mm.
Knowledge of logic and biases and how our brains work and how persuasion works is very, very helpful to understand it a bit more. And then attitudes like curiosity, humility, and courage. So, in writing the book, I think courage in particular was one I was like, this is crucial because we have to take a risk. We have to admit that we're wrong or maybe apologize or say we don't know to be good critical thinkers. And it's a practice and we have to constantly update our beliefs and our, knowledge and how we see the world based on new information because it's changing all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly relevant for women in the demographic that this podcast is aimed at. So that's the, 45 to 50 plus. And you did hit on something before, and I know we discussed this in the pre meet, but it was about cognitive load and decision fatigue. And these are two things that women, I'll say in my demographic, cite as common
Oh, there you
challenges
go. Yeah.
when faced with making decisions. So, how can critical thinking help us in this area?
Guess I often say to people, if you know what's important, then that helps you decide where to apply your critical thinking because we can't think critically about everything all the time. So I would say to people, something like, what's for dinner? Is the classic question.
Mm,
And people get to the end of the day and they're like, oh, I'm tired. My brain's been overloaded with making decisions for other people all day. And you might say, I don't care, whatever. But you might say, this is actually quite important because when we think about what are those things that are truly valuable to us, say health, for example, would be the classic one, then
mhm,
those small decisions we make every day do lead to the big life changing things that we can aspire to. So if you are someone who is like, oh, I'm just drained at the end of each day, the most useful thing you can do, obviously, is think about things in advance and have routines and habits around it. I often quote Annie Duke, who's a decision strategist based in the States, and she says the worst time to make a decision is when you're facing one down, because if you haven't thought about it or put any guidelines to whatever that decision may be, then you'll just go with the flow because
mm.
emotional beings first and logical and rational second. So, you know, creating habits, creating routines, having a process around it, or even, pre agreements with people, setting yourself up for success. So when you're tired and
Mm,
you think about system one and system two thinking, your system one's a reactive mode and system two's more logical, rational. By the end of the day, system two's exhausted.
mm.
So it's going, right, what can I do in advance to make sure system one doesn't completely derail me? And I love in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman's like, system one likes, caffeine and sugar and chocolate and alcohol and all our little coping strategies
Yeah.
we have. So yeah, it's about, how can you set yourself up for success and knowing yourself and knowing what's important to you. So when you get to those tricky moments, you can be guided by that.
And I think that will resonate with a lot of people because I am one of those people that comes home from, work. And it does get worse towards the end of the week where you're just thinking, please don't ask me to make a decision. I've been making decisions for everybody else all week and I just have no mental capacity
Yeah.
just to do that. And you're right. You don't want to make a decision based on emotion for something that could be quite important.
Mm.
So, with that in mind, can you walk us through your process for navigating difficult or emotional decisions?
Oh, it's such a myriad of things
Yeah.
there. I guess a useful system that I have that I teach people in workshops and things, which works for personal and professional, is a point model. So
Mhm.
the P is permission, who's allowed to make this decision, and particularly in corporate and big organizations, that's the first hurdle that people fall down on. Oh, I don't
Mm.
know, let someone else make it. But we need to own things, and it's important to take ownership over decisions that impact us. So if we can own it or seek permission, and if it's a personal thing, sometimes we need to give ourselves permission. We will have stories that hold us back, or we say, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not the kind of person who does those things. And it's like, well, why not? Have you chosen that, or is that just a kind of bias that you have? Then we zoom out, look at the big picture. What do we want long term, or how does this fit with the purpose or the strategy? So getting that, long term angle on it. And then we zoom in, look at the detail, look at the data. What's the metric that really matters? And so often I go places and they'll be like, oh, yeah, data driven decision making is very important. I say, cool, all right, but you've got too much data now.
Mm.
Which is the one thing is that that you will make a difference here? You will move things forward, or is it customer satisfaction? Is it the bottom line? Is it progress on the project? Whatever. So knowing what's the data that you want and need, and you're going to use to measure success. Then we talk about the N, the noise. So what fallacies or biases or assumptions are interfering with the clarity of your thinking. And sometimes just having a sounding board can be incredibly helpful to clarify that. And using AI. Lots of people use AI as a little, you know, am I completely going off track? And let's be honest, AI will probably tell you, yeah, you're great, you're amazing. But at least you've, articulated your thought process. And then test. So take action, do something to move it forward. And I don't know where I first heard it, but I like the phrase, "Action is the antidote to anxiety." A lot of people get caught up.
Hmm.
This doesn't work on a visual, but I'm kind of doing a little spinny thing with my fingers here. Caught up in overthinking or anxiety or just fear of failure or lots of other things going on, but we get stuck. And I like that kind of nibble rather than scoff. Like, what's some small action I can take to get out of that cycle of overthinking?
Because quite often we sort of get tied up in that whole analysis paralysis thing, but we
100%.
also don't want to make a decision that's based on a knee jerk reaction to something,
Mm,
particularly if it's something that's going to impact us for a long time to come.
yes.
Now, you did touch on biases and assumptions when you talked about your point model. In your experience, have you found any specific biases or assumptions that tend to affect, let's say, women more so than others, and particularly women, say, 45 plus?
Well, that's interesting. I suppose with this demographic in particular, maybe not so much now, but over time, this idea of role models is really crucial. And
Mm,
who's in a position that you would like to be in the future. And just before coming on, I was thinking about, because I'm such a nerd, I was thinking about and there's one called the Wizziati, "What you see is all there is," which I
yeah, yeah.
and it's just that idea that, what you've been exposed to will limit the options that you see available. So,
Mm,
me growing up, I didn't know people did jobs like I do now. They did
yeah.
was not exposed to it at all. I didn't know it was something that women did. When we think about jobs in the house, still, yesterday I was at a Mother's Day thing at school and it was 9 till 10 a.m. And you can imagine in that room, there was a lot of women who've got very senior, responsible jobs. And they're like, man. And there was little comments, and I love my son's teacher, no shade on her, but she kept dropping these little comments like, on the taste test, "Oh, you can tell who cooks from scratch," or baby food, you and just that kind of narrative, and
Yeah.
we've come so far, and yet those ideas are still there. So I think it's useful to unpack some of those stories and just, I was glad to be sat next to someone who went, I'm not sure I appreciate these comments. Are you a lazy mom sort of thing? Is it lazy or is it smart, you know? And
Yeah.
again, the values piece there about, well, what do you want? I think there's never been a better time to be female. And I think for older women in particular, the years of wisdom and knowledge and power that they hold that they probably don't realize. And I see people, there's a woman in a workshop, a real standout to me. She'd been told that she wasn't that useful at work. There was kind of a bullying narrative, which we didn't go into too deeply, but I could see from my perspective, this glamorous woman who knows her stuff and was like, I don't know, just so valuable to this organization, but she didn't value herself. So I think, find those role models, find the people you look up to, find women who are kicking goal, not because they look great, but because they're smart and capable and funny and fearless, and expose yourself to those people because they're definitely out there.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because we do need more role models for women, and if you can't see it, you can't be it. So
Yeah.
we do need to have a lot more women that stand up just to, show the younger generation out there that we, can do anything that we set our minds to. And it reminds me of an article I read online, was within the last week. A mother had gone to pick up her child from school, I believe it was, and she was wearing her Air Force uniform. And some teenage girls asked her, "Oh, are you a flight attendant?" And she said, "No, I'm a pilot." And they said, "We didn't know girls could do that."
Yeah.
So it was such a just, well, one, we make assumptions that
Mm.
are based on appearance, and this was a totally, out of left field response, which just goes again to show the things that women can do that perhaps aren't as visible as they should be.
Yes, yes. I suppose where would you see that, right?
But you
I have
wouldn't, yeah.
many pilots in uniform, male or female, but there's a lovely video that often crops up on social media, group of kindy kids are asked to draw a surgeon, I think maybe a pilot, someone in the army, this kind of thing, and they all draw boys in those
Yeah.
roles. They bring in the women, and they're in their uniforms, and they ask them the question. But I suppose, as with anything, sometimes we don't want to be the visible one from that, like a token or someone who's held up and shown as a good example, because that's scary, right? To be a role model. And yet, I think it's important that people do that, that we see people from each demographic, culture, age group, community, whatever, in those different roles, because that's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, for men and women and any gender in between.
Absolutely need more role models, I think, just to, show others what we can do. And it might open up a whole new career field for you that you
Mm.
never knew existed. So, yeah, absolutely heavily, promote anything related to trailblazing women and role models. So we'll come back a little bit and we'll talk about communication and sort of setting boundaries. So, how does effective communication tie into critical thinking and setting boundaries?
Oh gosh. I think critical thinking comes into everything
Yeah.
really. Mm, if we look at, uh, setting boundaries, I suppose that speaks to what I was saying before about a boundary is a decision you've made in advance, isn't it? It's something you've decided that this is okay or this is not okay, or I won't accept that. And that will be based on your values.
Hmm. Hmm.
In terms of communication, say, are we thinking about in the workplace or at home here? What's on your
Could
mind?
be both. I think it's relevant to both, but probably more so if I think about women in that 45 to 50 plus age group setting boundaries for themselves.
Mm.
I think sometimes some of us have had that carer role for such a long time that, we're mum, we're coach, we're chef, we're taxi driver, we're a lot of things. And when we get to that age where, the kids grow up, they leave home, and we continue to do those roles because that's all that we've been used to. And we don't really think to take time for ourselves. But we realize that we do we do need to take time for ourselves, and we do have the time now to be able to do that. So I think there's perhaps some need there to set a boundary, whether they be, social or family related boundaries, so you can make the most of your time, and sort of start prioritizing yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I suppose with any transition and change, whether it's at home or work, like different life
Mm.
stages, taking that time to reflect and step away and say, okay, well, this is the habits that I've built and this is the beliefs that I have around this. Maybe I need to rethink this. So, an exercise I often do is to have a Venn diagram on a
Mhm.
board or something. We say, this is what's comfortable and this is what's true. So if we talk about the life situation or maybe even a team at work, because I see leadership and parenting have lots of similarities here.
Mm, definitely.
The comfortable thing might be people need me, I have to do everything. Might not be what you want, but it's what you've kind of your habits and your
Mm,
actions built. Whereas the truth might be I need to let go. I need to allow them to make their own mistakes. I need to um, start, changing my attitude to supporting people, and question my identity. And so, if you've got some beliefs in there, just asking, is it true? Is it helpful? Is a useful thing to ask.
yeah.
Is it logical? Is it relevant? And starting to unpick some of those. And that's hard to do when you're busy, when you're just on that treadmill of busy, busy, whatever. Whereas this is starting to think more strategically.
Mm,
And, I say busy is the enemy of strategy. You can't think well strategically if you're just constantly consuming information and getting things done and just ticking off the next to do list. So, doesn't have to be a big step away, it doesn't have to be a week-long silent retreat anywhere, but just taking a moment to journal or talk it through with someone you trust. And, we have lots of processes to make decisions, but a simple one, if you're not sure, flip a coin, and then by the time
yeah.
it's landed, you can decide if you wanna go again, then that's telling you you don't like that decision. And if you're like, oh, yeah, that'll do, then that's your gut feel. And I think sometimes just that mirror held up for us can be incredibly helpful to reflect on where we're at and whether that's where we want to be.
That's really some really helpful tips there, and I'm thinking some of these sound like sticky notes on my computer screen. Is it true? Is it helpful?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I often try and do them around the house, and my kids are like, stop it. I just want a hug, you know?
Oh, I love it. So, what strategies do you use to teach critical thinking to adults who might not have had any formal training?
Gosh, all sorts. A day with me is jam packed with different exercises, ways of thinking about it. I suppose the main thing I try and do is connect it to what's real for them. So often at the beginning
Mm,
of the workshop, I'll say, right, what decisions are we currently making? What problems are we trying to solve? And then that starts to inform which tools I'll foreground. Because it's funny, essentially, critical thinking, to do it well, it's about asking lots of questions. And so we have different methods that we ask questions.
yeah.
One thing I have is a decision dice, which is about reframing. So by putting it on a dice, it makes it more playful. It gives people permission to ask the questions. So that's kind of based loosely on Edward de Bono's six thinking hats.
Mhm.
And so looking at things from different perspectives. Got some matching cards to help people see some very real example of biases and fallacies in action. And then, I'll invite them to come up with their own examples of it. So, it might be ad populum, which is kind of the peer pressure fallacy. Everyone else is doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's for teenagers. And you're like, no, why is the lawn looking good? What puts, oh, it's because the neighbors all have good looking lawns. I feel the pressure to do it. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
there we go. Why using AI in the company? Oh god, everyone else is using it. We need to keep up. There we go. Lots of different question structures. There's a favorite of mine. Years ago, I worked for my dad in a pharmacy, and we had this diagnostic tool, the WHAM. Who's the patient? What are the symptoms? How long have they had it? What action have you taken? And what medication are you on? And
Mhm.
I always remember that. And so I've got a similar but different kind of framework, which is diagnostic for trying to solve a problem. And so you can imagine, like, there's a lot of you know, what's happening? What's the problem we're actually trying to solve here? Why are we solving it? What have we already done? Who's involved? All those sorts of questions. And what's nice now more and more is about getting people to kind of come up with their own structures because
Mhm.
I'm very open about take this, make it your own. I will support them to do that. Often after a workshop, I'll write up what they've come up with so that they feel that sense of ownership over what we've created, and then it's just more helpful for them in their particular context they're in.
You mentioned the decision dice, which I did actually see on a YouTube video somewhere
Rabbit
when I
on.
was watching you. Do you have them where I can get one? Can I
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've got some wooden ones, which you may have seen online, and then for years I would make little card ones for workshops, but I've elevated it now. I have like a proper printed little box thing that people can have. So I'm gonna post you one, Kate. But if anyone's listening and they're like, yeah, there's a few left on my website. I got them etched by someone local here, based in Subiaco. So yeah, they're lovely and tactile.
Oh,
I'm
fantastic.
always thinking about in workshops or talks I'm giving, how can I make it something you can touch or feel or play with to make it more memorable? Because we don't do that very much. We're just very screen based these days. And I think that's part of the reason people really enjoy the workshop. It's that moment to connect with yourself, connect with other people through a kind of playful mode. So it's
Yeah,
not,
and it's sort of an upgrade to the whole Magic 8 Ball thing, which many years ago, I did have one sitting on my desk that
yes, yes,
used to provide hours of amusement to people.
yeah. I've gifted them as prizes in workshops because I have a few in my bag, and then I bought these little ones on Temu, and someone was playing with it the other day, and they said it didn't answer a yes or no, it just said, "You're hot." I was like, "Oh my god, I didn't even know it said that."
No.
I hadn't explored it fully, but I do love a magic 8 ball. It's similar to the coin trick, right? If you go,
Yeah,
"Oh, yeah, I like that," then that's your gut saying that's the answer that you want, you know?
and we will pop your, website details in the show notes, so if anyone wants to go and have a look around, they can, feel free to go and visit. Now, and you have mentioned AI a couple of times today, and it's obviously something that's developing very quickly from a technology standpoint. So, sort of want to flip the script a little bit. So, in today's AI driven world, how do you see critical thinking evolving or becoming more important?
Well, I always say to people, like, we need to maintain our agency.
Hmm.
Um, the temptation is there to go, "Oh, yeah, I'll just get AI to do this, this, and this." You're like, "Well, the ultimate responsibility for decisions or work you've produced sits with you." Uh,
Hmm.
so just, remembering that, first of all, particularly when we're tired and we're like, "Oh, that'll do." I'm sure everyone's had a moment where they've gone, "Oh, shoulda checked that a bit more." So, yeah, checking your assumptions, fact checking. Google still has its place.
Hmm.
In terms of how critical thinking is changing, I think it's just becoming more and more important. And in my book, I write in the introduction about like the history of critical thinking, and essentially, as more information becomes available to people, with access to technology, and we're speaking from a very kind of Western centric mode here. But as we've had more information, we've had to apply our critical thinking and use our judgment more and more because we've got more decisions to make. 200 years ago, you just did as you were told, or off with your
Mm,
head, or off to prison, or whatever. So I guess it's the cliche, is it Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility. And so, with access to more information, we have more responsibility and freedom to make decisions for ourselves. And we need to make sure we exercise that, but exercise it with the caution of not just accepting. Because to your point earlier, what I notice a lot is people, because there's so much information out there, a lot of people I speak to lack confidence in making their own decision. And so will outsource to an
mm,
expert, whether that's a consultant at work or, paying a coach or someone to tell you how to do something. And the reality is often we know ourselves and our situation better than anyone. We just need someone to say, yes, that's okay. And that's the permission piece, isn't it?
mm,
So when the danger comes when we listen too much to the, use the word confident bullshit, as Dr. Peter refers to it, the articulate, well expressed stuff that AI can give us. And the reality is we shouldn't use it just to answer our questions. We should use it to question our own answers, to coach us
mm,
rather than say, "Oh, yeah, that'll do." And again, the values, right? If it's something like, I don't know, a recipe for dinner, you might say, "Oh, I don't care. Like, that's fine." "Claude, what can you do with chicken and rice and a piece of broccoli? Give me some inspiration." But if it's something important that's gonna really impact your life, then don't be outsourcing it. So use it, and I see lots of people using it in waves. You kind of like, "Okay, I'm gonna try this for a bit," but then, scale it back. Say something like a meeting note taker is a classic.
mhm,
"Great, I can stop taking notes." It's like, no, now I'm not across the information. I didn't listen as intently as if I was, making notes like my life depended on it. So that's one thing where I went, "Oh, this is great." And then went, "No." Same with writing for LinkedIn. You go, "Yeah, sure." Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And if
mm,
anything, say to people now, don't use it for that. I want your messy, unstructured thoughts more than I want something where I read it and go, "Oh, it doesn't really sound like them. And now I don't trust you?"
yeah,
That
yeah.
trust humanity is crucial, particularly in business, but in so many other areas too.
And I think that's really important because I know a lot of people are concerned about AI coming for their jobs
Mm,
and effectively, putting them out of employment. But you will still always need a human in the loop to check that
mm,
the data's incorrect. And I'm a big advocate for particularly women providing feedback to the AI agents and models if they get a response that doesn't quite sit well with them.
mm,
And a recent experience that I had, I did actually have a difference of opinion with Claude a couple of weeks ago over the 25th of April, which was Anzac Day was a Saturday. And I can't remember the exact scenario, but Claude kept throwing back to me the Friday, the 25th of April. And I said, no, it's 2026. And the 25th of April falls on a Saturday this year.
mm.
And Claude came back twice, arguing with me. And the third time, Claude went and checked date and time and then apologized. So uh, that just goes to show that just because you read the AI response doesn't necessarily mean it's correct.
Mm.
And this was a date which was verifiable. Obviously, there are other sources that you would need to use that critical thinking expertise or just critical thinking methodology to go and validate is actually correct.
Yeah. That's a funny example, and this is the issue, right? On the one hand, we say, "Oh, AI is gonna cure cancer, save lives, I don't know, get world peace somehow." Like,
Mm,
all these big aspirations, and yet I don't trust it with my credit card, and I don't trust it to organize my kid's birthday party. Something that's fairly low stakes in the grand scheme of things. It's a tool, it's a support thing. This is why Copilot is very well named, or my husband's got a thing he's created called Wingman.
mhm.
So it's like it's a helper, but it's not the main course, it's not the main thrust of what we're doing. And it can only do what you point it towards. Just because you can make 15 websites in a day doesn't mean you
You
should.
should, yeah,
Definitely, like, what are you gonna do with them afterwards anyways? It's about using it in a way that helps you achieve whatever output or outcomes that you want within a structure that you've thought about.
mm,
Because, we're not even speaking about the environmental costs of some of the AI things we're using, and it's easy to forget them because it's a long way away and we don't see the impact. So I think, being very intentional, very conscious about where we adopt AI and what information we put into it, because there's already issues around cybersecurity, and then
absolutely.
you work in IT, like, you're very much more aware of this than I am even. So, yeah, there's a lot of other considerations here, which are
Absolutely, and I could just really go off on a whole other tangent about that, but that's not what today's episode is about.
Mm.
We'll keep it
Tune in for
constrained to
next
critical
Sunday.
thinking. Yeah. Can you share a personal story where critical thinking made a significant difference in your life?
Well, I guess there's different parts of critical thinking. If it comes to personal decisions, I almost retrospectively apply the sort of nibble rather than scoff
Yeah.
approach I have. And often with that I say, what's a path you can take that's more reversible and less consequential?
Mm,
Moving to Australia. Big risk, right? We
yeah.
were in London at the time. We were, child free and stuff. It was my now husband and I deciding what to do. And so, he was offered a job in Perth. So we were like, oh God, where's Perth? That wasn't part of the plan. But I think that remaining open to different ideas is important. And we came for a year with a backpack each. We made it as reversible as possible. Makes me laugh now to think how when we first got here, the first two apartments we had were fully furnished. So people would come around and go, "Oh, look at this picture. What's that?" I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know." I don't even notice it. All the cutlery, all the bedding, absolutely everything was included. And it just meant that we lived very lightly for that first 12 months. And I'm glad we gave it 12 months because anytime you move somewhere new, you have to kind of test it out. And it takes a while to get settled and build relationships. Because I didn't have a job when we first got here. There was definitely some lonely days watching cricket
Mm,
couch because I didn't know anyone and I didn't have a job to go to.
mhm.
It's the only time I've ever watched cricket. But that kind of nibble rather than scoff. Same with the business, it's kind of really proud how it's happened quite organically. And I feel like every new stage that I've reached, not physical stage, but just like, metaphorical stage with the business, I've felt very happy with it, not comfortable. And there's been lots of discomfort with the growing,
Mm,
but happy that, I've earned it and I've put the yards in and, it's grown in a way that I've made mistakes, don't get me wrong, but I'm really happy with how it's evolved over time.
yeah.
And that's through experimenting, through trying things out. But before doing that, doing the research, talking to people, and I guess, I could be more data driven with the decisions that I make, but I also put a lot of store in talking to people, like
Mm,
getting their story, how they did something, and then thinking critically about, does that apply to me? Is that true for me? Is that useful? Is it logical? Is it relevant? All that stuff. So, yeah, so there's a lot of kind of, I suppose, navel gazing along the way. Is this good? Am I comfortable? And it's challenging. I've had to say no to some things because it doesn't fit with where I want the company to go or the kind of
Mm.
I will feel proud of when I look back on it. Yeah, it's challenging, yeah, but I think that confidence, and that's what I want for my clients often is
Yeah.
just feel confident. Like, yeah, I did the best I could at the time with what I had.
Yeah, and I think, what's that saying? Growth is at the end of your comfort zone.
How about for you? Is there any decisions that you've made where you're like, "Yeah, I feel proud of how I did that or how I approached that decision?"
Oh, many. Yeah, I think probably from when I was younger, some of the things that I did want to do, that I challenged myself to do,
Mhm.
that I joined the army when I was quite young because that's what I always wanted to do, and that was absolutely the right decision for me at the time. And then the next transition phase was, do I want to leave the military?
Mm.
And that was a decision based on had surgery on my knee, and it was a decision based on, is it gonna get worse if I live this particular lifestyle, or do I not want to be incapacitated at the time I'm 35? So, there were those lifestyle and transition types of changes, decisions that I have made, and when I do look back, because I do a little bit of navel gazing every now and again, um, I haven't regretted anything that I've done. I've certainly learnt a lot of things along the way, um, and my outlook is to take some of those key learnings and massage them or tweak them to carry them forward in my life. So there might have been things that didn't always turn out as planned, but instead of saying, oh, that didn't work out, I choose to say, what can I learn from this so I can implement change in the future? So I'd rather take it as a learning experience as opposed to something that I've regretted.
Love that. Yeah, and I guess a lot of your listeners will, similar to us, have had those pivotal moments of like, "Oh, do I change careers? Do I have a family or not? Or
Mm,
do I stay in this relationship or not?" And so, I think that grace for yourself to go, "I did the best I could at the time, and then, what can I take away from this?" My friend James Bryant, he says, "Wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Really glad I got to go through it of all
yeah.
those difficult things that we face in life because, I mean, that's what makes you who you are." Uh,
Mm,
and I think by the time we reach late 40s, 50s, everyone's had, the hard, crappy stuff happen of some description. Like not everyone had the same stuff, but everyone's got their invisible backpack of things. But using that as something valuable and useful rather than heavy and feeling bad about decisions, just go, well, I can't change it, but I can make the best of the mess that I have now.
yeah. Yep. Yep. 100% agree.
Mhm.
And I think reframing it as what can I learn
Mm,
puts you in that growth mindset
yeah.
stage as well, which will only benefit you in the future.
Yeah, yeah. Though I think as I've grown older, one thing I've shifted on is allowing myself to acknowledge the emotional toll of things a bit more, like
Mm,
the mud, you know, have your have your doona day, have you cried, like eat the ice cream, whatever you need. Because I know in the past I'm much more likely to have gone, oh, okay, that didn't work out. What can I learn from this?
mm.
Rather than go, oh, that didn't work out, and I feel disappointed, and I'm going to allow myself to feel the feelings before I then
Yes.
move
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100% agree with that. So, what is one practical takeaway or exercise that the listeners perhaps can start using today to improve their critical thinking?
I'd say so there's critical thinking can be applied externally and internally. So something we can do internally would be along the lines of like perhaps journaling on some of those questions that we've talked about already. So,
Mhm.
write down some stuff that you think at the moment about who you are, maybe your identity or how you see yourself. If you want to do like a career one or something. And then is it true? Is it helpful? Is it useful? Um, and whether you want to change something that's there or you know that you need to update it perhaps. So journaling on that. And then in terms of external, I suppose doing a little audit, what are you exposing yourself to in terms of your content online? I was thinking just
Mm,
this more like cognitive sovereignty, what is coming up in your feed on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever you might be? Is it where you want it to be? Is it, what's the impact on that? And maybe pick one story to dig into that you're particularly interested in, because I know going down that rabbit hole, I love the phrase, like, data can tell you any story you want if you torture it enough. So, if you're like for the book, I did dark chocolate because I love dark chocolate. So
Mhm.
went down the whole doing some research into the science of it. Taking ownership over that as something that I consume every day, just being a bit realistic about, oh, is this good? Like, what does the
Mm.
research
Yeah.
say? What do the headlines say, and what's behind that? So, yeah, just having a little explore with it, going a bit deeper because we can be very superficial in our daily interactions.
Yeah, absolutely. I must admit I have recently taken up journaling again,
Awesome.
probably in about the last 12 months, and it is different from the diary you write when you're a 16-year-old girl with the love angst and all that sort of teenage emotions, but, I do try to make time every morning before picking up my phone, and
Mm,
this is a new habit that I'm trying to implement, is to sit down and journal my intention for the day,
love that.
and then sort of reflect over that while I'm having my first cup of coffee, which is my crutch in the morning.
Yeah.
I find it quite peaceful, um, and contemplative, and I do think it sort of sets you up for the rest of the day as opposed to waking up and grabbing my phone off the nightstand and starting to look at emails, which
Yeah,
new habit that I'm trying to
yeah.
instill in myself.
Well, I think that's it, like, giving our brains room to breathe is so important, and it's quite frightening, actually, the number of people I speak to that do exactly what you described, right? The phone is the alarm clock, straight on the phone. They might not be staring at it all day, every day, but they're available. There is a screen in their hand, in their pocket,
Mm,
at work, and then we use screens for entertainment, and we're consuming all day. And you go, "Well, where's those moments when you don't have a phone or you're not available and your brain goes into like connection mode, like default
mm,
mode, starts making connections?" And I think that sort of release is so important for our mental health, just those moments of quiet. And you have to be very intentional to create them because I love Tim Minchin talks about conveniencing ourselves into meaninglessness. It's so
mm.
easy to just kind of fall down and slip into complete screen addiction. And then you go, hang on, is this how I want to live my life? Like staring at a box? It's so like weird when you think about it, but so important to just be aware of.
Absolutely. And the episode before this was just a coffee break reflection episode because I had just come back from a weekend away with the girls and I had made a conscious decision to not take my work laptop or my work phone with me and to be more present, be more connected with, the women that I was with. And we can have a good laugh and we can really connect with each other without staring at our screens or having our phones face down on the table. And I did come back from that weekend feeling a lot more relaxed and refreshed from purely from not having, had that screen time. And whilst I did take my personal laptop with me, I didn't open it until day 2, and that was for about 30 minutes to ask ChatGPT to put together a collage of all the photos that I'd taken
Oh,
over
that's
the
like,
weekend so we could have, some memories of that. So
yeah, love that.
highly recommend having a mini digital detox if you
Yeah.
can, and even if it's putting your phone in the bathroom before you go to bed at night, and
Mm,
just notice the difference
yeah,
that it
definitely.
makes.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. All right. So if any of our listeners do want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do this? And I know I will post the details in the show notes below.
Beautiful. Yeah, look, my email inbox is me mostly, hello@bethanwyn.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn and, LinkedIn quite regularly, and then Instagram sporadically. I'll sort of post a few bits there. So I say LinkedIn's where I'm trying to be professional, and Instagram is more behind the scenes at work stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, lovely to hear from listeners and hear if they've tried something or if they have any questions. Yeah, or more than happy for people to reach out.
Excellent. And one thing that we haven't actually gone into in depth is you are an author, and
Mm,
you do have a copy of your book sitting next to you.
I do, yeah.
So and I have downloaded a copy from, I've got the e-version, so I've got the Kindle version of the ebook. If the listeners do want to purchase a copy,
Mhm.
where would you direct them to?
If they're in Australia, I'd say go to my website, so, bethanwin.com.au/shop, and there's a couple of bits in there, and you can get a signed copy and a few goodies from me, or if you're further afield, then it's available, oh my gosh, Amazon and lots of other places. You don't need to give Jeff Bezos your money. There's lots of other things you can get it through. And there's also the ebook available and the audiobook coming very soon as well, which is
Awesome.
very exciting. Yeah, another learning journey and stretching out my comfort zone, creating that. So yeah, I try to make it as accessible as possible, knowing that, people like ourselves are busy and audiobooks are sometimes the best way to get that information in a way that works for people. So yeah, that's coming soon too.
I do love a good audiobook. I can listen to it on my morning walk.
Love that.
Thank you, Beth Ann. I think what today's conversation really highlights is that critical thinking isn't about becoming cold or analytical or detached from emotion. It's
Mm,
about learning to pause long enough to ask better questions on
mm,
both of ourselves, of the information that we consume, particularly around AI, and of the stories that have been conditioned into us or about what we've been told about who we should be. And
100%.
I know for so many women in midlife, there's a shift happening because careers change, relationships evolve, families grow up and they leave home, and our priorities move as well. And with that, we often comes the realization that we can't keep outsourcing our decisions. And I know that you've touched on this, or our boundaries, or our self trust to everyone else around us. And what I really loved about this conversation is that you've shown us that critical thinking isn't just a corporate skill or an academic exercise, that it's actually a life skill. And it
100%.
helps us navigate overwhelm, which many of us can relate to. It can help us communicate more clearly, perhaps trust ourselves more, and make decisions that actually align with who we are now as opposed to who we used to be. So, thank you for such a thoughtful and genuinely empowering conversation.
Thanks, Kate. And what a beautiful summary there. Nailed it. Go forward and think critically.
Thank you very much, Beth Ann. And as I said, we'll pop the details in the show notes and people can pop in and have a look and get in touch with you.
Beautiful. I'd love that. All right. Thanks so much, Kate. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with another woman who might need to hear it, because these are the conversations that help us move forward with more confidence, clarity, and courage. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you would leave a review. It takes 2 minutes and it genuinely helps the show reach more women who need it. Share it with someone who might need to hear it, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because we have some really good conversations in the pipeline. And one more thing, Unfiltered and Unbound is completely independent and unsponsored. That means no ads, no brand deals, just honest conversation. So if this show is adding something to your life and you want to support it, I have a me a coffee link in the show notes. Even a small one means a lot, and it keeps us going, and it tells me you're out there listening. And I appreciate every single one of you.